What's probably the best piece of advice you've ever received, you believe, throughout your career, and who is that from, and why was it the best piece of advice?
So if we discount the people that are not alive, like the great thinkers of the past,
Yep.
I would probably say it. I mean, I've received so many good advice over the years, and a lot of it I only realized with the passing of time that it was good
Mm.
advice. Many of it wasn't even framed as an advice. It's only sometimes that you realize that somebody is telling you about themselves, but it could be understood as an advice. So again, back at the same about the same time, we're talking similar 2002, 2003. I have heard that there is an opportunity of Amman resorts coming to Adriatic. So first of all, still early ages of the modern communications. So I go online, find the website of Amman Resorts. It's some info email address in Singapore, and I say I'm this young student from Kotor, and I hear that there might be an Amman coming to near Dubrovnik. And now that I'm in this industry, I believe that that could be a good match, or I would like at least to have an opportunity to work for a brand like that. I already knew at the time that that was one of the, if not the most esteemed hotel brand in the
Mm.
world. And funnily enough, a few days later, I received an answer from a general manager that was assigned to the Adriatics, planning to open two properties, and her name is Sunny Lusted, actually an Australian general manager at the time, and she invited me to a coffee in Cavtat near Dubrovnik, and just based off this email, and we've had a coffee, met, and I did not make much of this. So it was then 2008, 5 years later, 6 years later, I'm on Silver Seas cruises, and I receive an email from a friend saying, "Where you're at, there is a person trying to find you. Her name is Sunny Lusted, and she's been asking all over the country for you, and here's her email." So I reach out. At the time, we just touched the port of Piraeus, coming from Asia, and I was ready to go home after 9 months at seas. And I call her. I mean, funnily enough, I actually call her from one of those booths, the old school booths where you go into
Yep.
the port and there is actually a phone with a wire.
Yep.
So I call her up and she says, "Oh, where you're at? I would like to talk to you. We are actually opening in Amman. It's been 5, 6 years, but we are actually opening one, and I would like you on board."
Wow.
And I come to Montenegro. We have a discussion, and I join them. And I ask her, why did you take that meeting 5, 6 years ago with me that resulted? This is where you see how the world is interconnected and how it all works out in some serendipitous way. And she says, "Well, you gotta find, if you don't find 10, 15 minutes to meet people when they reach out, what's the point of it all?" And I don't know if that's how she continued living. I would like to believe so, but I have taken that as one of the mantras of my life.
Yeah.
I fail, obviously. Sometimes the life is just too intense and too busy.
Of course.
But when somebody writes a nice intro and they ask for a meeting, I say, "Listen, I'll find 15 minutes without any agenda, without any expectation." So I took that as an advice. You can't make yourself unreachable. You can't make yourself untouchable. You actually, the opposite. You have to make yourself accessible. People have to know that they can reach out, meet you, and you have to make yourself come down or to the side or whatever to find those 15 minutes. Otherwise, exactly what is the point? Why are we doing all of this? And this is what I tell now as an advice to many other people, especially the younger managers that fly rather quickly and say, book the meeting through my PA or something like that. It's like, easy with creating barriers. Open the doors, open the windows. It's easy to build walls.
I mean, look, my mum and dad inspired me. My father was an immigrant into Australia from Egypt and built his own business and was very successful in doing that. And that just made you realize that he turned up here with nothing and built. So it just gave you the confidence that you have a go at whatever you can and give it your best shot. And I've always been inspired by my wife, who's very successful within her career and has done extremely well. But within hospitality, I've had a number of mentors throughout my career. If I look back at my intercontinental days, the likes of people like Wolfgang Grimm and Christian Piradon in Sydney, John O'Carroll, who was the regional GM of the Intercontinental Park Lane in London, Campbell Black, who was RVPO in the US when I was in San Francisco. I mean, these people were, really had a big effect on my career early on. And then when I came back to Australia and joined at Sofitel Melbourne, I mean, I was the number two to Clive Scott. Clive's an icon in our industry and someone who does things differently, but just learning under Clive and the opportunities he gave me, I don't think I'd be where I am today without his assistance and support. And then I've got to give credit to people like Michael Eisenberg and Simon McGrath. You look at what they have done with Accor, Michael throughout Asia Pacific and Simon in the Pacific, and
Yep.
they're true legends of the industry. But I'm very fortunate to be able to call them both friends now. But I still call upon them for advice, and because they've got so much experience, and what you just look at what they've done and achieved, and it's just it's inspirational. So I've been fortunate. I've had numerous great people to work with, and in fairness, a lot of great owners that I got to work with. When I was at Sofitel Gold Coast and Sofitel Brisbane, they were both owned by Thakral, and the owner's representative was a gentleman by the name of Wayne Munn. And Wayne was a very tough taskmaster, but what I learned from him as a GM was incredible. You had to be across everything. You had to be across not just your numbers, but your team satisfaction, your guest satisfaction, your capex, just the whole package. And I think that really shaped me for where I am today.
Yeah, there's probably four particular leaders that spring to mind for me. The first is Gus Simmons, who's one of the CEOs of Accor over in Asia.
Yep.
I worked with Garth on and off over a period of almost 12 years in 4 or 5 different hotels. He was incredibly supportive. He would often hold me back for promotions and opportunities to ensure that I was well grounded and ready to take that next step, which at the time I couldn't understand, but now I reflect back on that time and now I understood why he held me back. So Garth's certainly one of them. Another person that springs to mind is Peter Hill, who's one of the senior or head of development for EVT. Peter and I worked very closely during my time with Ridges, and he gave me my first opportunity as a general manager. I worked under him for a long period of time, and it certainly showed me how to be a great leader and showed me all the qualities of how to run operations efficiently and effectively and get the best of your people. The third person that springs to mind is also Simon McGrath. So Simon and I worked not only at AHL, but also in recent times at Accor. I was fortunate when I finished with AHL that Simon reached out, presented an incredible opportunity for me to join Accor. And, we went about kind of changing the landscape of food and beverage across the Accor hotels in Australia. He then presented an opportunity to lead Pullman brand. And the end goal was he made a promise to me when I joined that one day you will manage one of our Sofitel assets. And that came to fruition. I had an opportunity to lead Sofitel Wentworth, which you highlighted in my bio is the oldest 5-star hotel in this country. And, I was after a long line of general managers, and it was an absolute honor to manage that asset, and I look at it now and it's in its refurbished state and they've brought it back to life. And I think they've done an exceptional job. So Simon, definitely, not only professionally, but also personally, we've formed an incredible bond and relationship from many years ago, and that still stands today. So I certainly admire how he's maintained that relationship, but also his incredible leadership skill. He's a real people's person and understands the dynamics of getting the best out of people across various skill and experience levels. And lastly, and certainly more recently, is Girish Junjunwala, who's the owner and founder of Overlow Hotels. He presented me with an opportunity 5 years ago to join Overlow, and he's been, a great mentor, a real visionary, an entrepreneur, someone who leads by example. He's really, very proud of the hotels that he's created over the last 14 years. And he's developed a brand that's cutting edge, and it's still leading the way in the independent lifestyle space. So certainly learn a lot from Girish around being nimble and moving at a fast pace, and, kind of not necessarily disrupting, but taking the lead and looking at things from a different perspective. So they're the four people, Brendan, that have really inspired me throughout my career.
There's two parts. Inspiration. I was fortunate enough to have some amazing GMs in my past that have shaped me. Definitely, of course, let's start with my father. I mean, that's where he was quite hard on me, but he was hard for a reason. And I really, now when I look back, I think, wow, everything I can take and extract from him has helped me in today's business. Going forward though, the GM when I was at Cinnamon Grand, Mr. Rohan Kar, visionary guy, always about taking it to the next step forward. Always he was a visionary leader in terms when it came to food and beverage, when it came to the lobby feeling, when it came to the atmosphere. He's the one who taught me a lot about thinking further than what do we have in this box, in this square box. What can you do, and how can we create that? Going into Thailand also, I was fortunate enough to work with some amazing GMs from Christopher Leonhardt down at Amari Hui in my first resort property, Torsten Pinter. And then, of course, one of the ones I want to remember is a good Aussie GM of mine, Timothy Knott. We were in a revenue meeting. I'll never forget that, because I was just starting to learn revenue, right? And he was about to ask me some questions. He said, leave the room and don't come back until you know your numbers. And I love that, because that is so spot on. You got to know your numbers. You can be creative, you can be a great hands-on person, you can be operational, but if you don't know your numbers, how are you going to run optimizing? When you get up to, obviously that was getting the director EAM level, you need to know your P&L performance, right? So hats off to him. I have to really appreciate that one from him, where he taught me much more about financial revenue management, optimization, discipline. So those I guess were the inspirational parts. Now that I'm at GM now for the past 4 years, I always tell, like when I do lectures down at RMIT here, Vietnam, or talking to students or career chats, I always say the 3 Ps, right? The first one, of course, is passion. I mean, passion. This industry, as we were talking before, it's a long struggle. Like it's a long stretch, man. You're talking, it's good 15 to 20 years before you can get to the GM title. Everybody wants to get that role when you graduate from hospitality management, but without the passion, it's not going to take you there. You've got to love this job truly. The other ones is an immense amount of patience. Today's world, due to social media, due to iPhones, everyone's more about instant gratification and instant recognition and instant this and everything. But in this industry, it's patience. It takes years to learn every part. You've got to have that patience to understand each system of a hotel, each department of a hotel, how beds change. How does the Opera Cloud system work? How does check-in process work? How does the engineering work for a certain area? Can you change the pool pump? You are the main director, theater organizer of the whole aspect of the hotel. So take the patience to go and learn each bit. Act like a sponge and absorb that all.
Yep.
And last but not least is perseverance. Because some days you're going to be like, you're going to have days where you just like, I'm not going to say it, but you just like, I want to leave this. I want to, like, you just break down. Look, I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, I've been let go from a couple of jobs early on in my career, but they taught me a lot about that perseverance that I need to have when you go through tough times, through operations. Because hotels, it's whenever a hotel opens, it's open for 365 days a year, 24 hours a day until it shuts down or goes into renovation completely. Yep. So you're on all the time. So you got to have a lot of perseverance to push that hotel forward and create its legacy, its story. So I always say the passion, the patience, and the perseverance. You have these the 3 Ps, you will, the sky's the limit, not GM, CEO, vice president. or even open your own hotel management company. That's you have these three, you'll definitely go far, I guess.
It was probably my first expat role. It was in actually Vanuatu of all places, so not far from Australia. And my GM at the time, when he was interviewing me, he said, look, Wayne, you have to realize working in hospitality, particularly hotels, is a lifestyle. It's not a job. And you'd better get used to it pretty early on, or else don't do it. And that's stuck with me ever since. And I've certainly had people in my career have said, oh, you've got a wonderful lifestyle, Wayne. You go to all of these luxurious places and it's fantastic. You must love it. Yes, I love it. And they try and join. And then the first month end, you're doing a stock take on a Saturday night. And then all of a sudden, oh, hang on, I've got other things on it. So maybe this isn't for you. And so, yes, it is a lifestyle. It is genuinely a lifestyle. And I think most of the people that you probably interview on your program and others that you talk to know full well that it's not a job. It's something that you live.
It was probably you can't be good at everything, and you have to be known what to be really good at. Don't try to be the master of everything is probably the simplicity of that.
Yeah.
I remember my first general manager job. It was in Thailand, and we're about 3 months out from opening. One of my area bosses at that time said to me, okay, in 12 months' time, what are they going to say about you and your hotel? And I said, I'm going to have a top performing across all metrics. And he's like, well, no, you won't. What are the 3 things you're going to be really known for? What is your hotel going to be? And it helped me really stay focused.
Yeah.
And I do that today, right? I talk to my teams. I review my to-do lists. What am I doing today that's going to drive impact? And I think it's about narrowing people's focus. It's really helping your teams focus, but also it allows you to celebrate success more often than waiting for the complete balanced scorecard, so to speak. The reality is you're not going to get everything fully successfully achieved without doing one at a time anyway. So that advice has stayed with me. It was true back then. And I was fortunate with that hotel. We were very specific about our needs, and we ended up delivering those results. And I think at some point there's also that you need to realize what you're not going to focus on, right? So you can stay very focused on the goal, because we aspire to do more. And sometimes that's a challenge because we won't deliver the results. So really staying narrowly focused on what you want to be known for personally as a career, but also a performance on a business point of view as well.
I would say it's mainly 2 people. One, my father, sure. He was a key person in that regard.
Yep.
Very precise and doing things till it works.
Yep.
So that was a very strong influence. But then I had a chef, which I take over from in Mandarin in Shanghai. A very organized person, very detailed, and was very, looking forward. So he was looking for problems, not actually solutions.
Yep.
So he tried to cover all the angles to make sure everything goes smooth. So I think from that part, he was quite influential.
I steadfastly think the best piece of advice that I was ever given, and I give this advice quite regularly, is when I was at Park Hyatt, my EAM, and he's also a mentor for me as well, at the time was Andrew Ashdown, who has just finished his role as General Manager of Park Hyatt in Seoul. I was in this kind of crisis of career, I suppose, where I wasn't sure there was a great opportunity that was opening up when I was an assistant manager to move into a different team, which was guest services, which at Park Hyatt was a really robust and it was a very kind of interesting space. But I had in my mind always had a very prescribed kind of plan of, you become an assistant manager and then an AFOM and then an FOM, and that's sort of the ladder that you go up, which I think everybody has the belief in. And as I was kind of talking to him about should I apply for this role, he said to me very honestly, one day when you're hiring a front office manager, you're going to look at the list of candidates that are in front of you and you're going to say, do I want to hire the front office manager that has only ever done something in front office, or would I rather hire the front office manager who has gone and been an assistant manager, moved into other departments, whether it be housekeeping, whether it be guest services, and has then come back to front office and been a front office manager and has such a breadth of skill, and hands down the best advice that I could have taken, because yes, it was a slightly more surreptitious route to kind of get back in that direction. But what I learned from it was really quite significant. And I think as well, I would say that's one of the strongest pieces of advice. I had always thought in my mind that I would only ever work in really ultra 5-star hotels. And for the most part, that's been where my career has taken me. But coming back from Japan through COVID, when the opportunity came up in Brisbane, I'll be honest and say it's something that I hadn't ever really seen myself living in Brisbane. And it started initially as a temporary. I was working for the Hyatt Australia team, and I was just there to help with the opening of the hotel when they took it over. But through COVID, ended up becoming something a little bit more long-standing. I firmly believe that I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I hadn't experienced a different style of hotel, because you learn the master of your skill, I suppose, when you are in much more confined financial spaces where there's a lower rate and you're looking at volume and you're looking at how do I maximize experience with maybe a little bit of a shoestring budget. Because then when you're in a position where you're in a hotel, like Capella, where, okay, you have a much, much higher ADR and you have a lot more to be able to spend on experiential things and managing a bigger team, it just makes you a little bit more conscious about the decisions that you make. And I think it's really balance of experience. That advice has pushed me towards those sorts of things, because I don't think that I would have been so willing to come out of my comfort zone had I not received that advice.
One of the ones that stands out the most is one of the owner of the Southern Cross, who I said to him one time many years later, something about, do you miss not having the hotel? And he said, no, you only fall over looking backwards.
Okay.
And I just thought it was a really interesting way in terms of looking at what's happened to you in the past and thinking rather than dwelling on it. I used to have, when I was growing up, there was a TV show called Kung Fu. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
There was a particular part in there where the grasshopper was asking, his master something about, he was worried too much about what had happened in the past. And his master basically said, and I won't try and replicate the accent or anything, but his answer was, well, to remember the past is to aid the present, but to dwell on the past is to rob the future. And I thought that again was a really good piece of advice.
Yeah.
So I know that they're not specifically hotel related, but I think they're general life things that you could apply at any point anyway.
Thank you.